It's time. It is time to brew your best beer.
The 2020 Sjporr Challenge Gold sponsors Bouncer. A special thanks to double gold sponsor Bouncer, keeping the dregs out with an inline filter for homebrewers, keeping you homebrewers organized on a brew day with Boil Bro, and keeping beer fun with the Growler Bro mini beer flavor infusers. BrewTubers, online brewers club, forums, recipes, articles, new updates, brewing tools, and more. Yakima Valley Hops, fresh from the source to your kettle, supplying hops for homebrewers and the craft beer industry. Omega Yeast Labs, fresh, healthy, unique, pitch-ready liquid yeast for pro brewers and homebrewers. Jaded Brewing, home of the fastest immersion wort chiller, the Hydra, and other brewing supplies. Brady Instruments, supplying the world with high-quality, hand-blown, handcrafted, scientific instruments like the Sjporr Challenge Hydrometer Trophy.
Hey everybody, it's MM. I'm back again doing another after-work beer review. Kind of come home before I even go in the house, got all set up to do this and knock another one of these out. It is, I think it's Wednesday. The days are all starting to run together anymore. But this is kind of like my nice little in-between break before I go in and grab some dinner and start working again. So kind of had I did one of these the other night after I got home from work, and sort of took me a few minutes to get my brain kind of in the thought process for doing the review. So I tried to make a few notes about a couple things before I even started with this one. So let me first of all get you updated with where I'm at, and the entry that I'm looking at this evening, or that I'm going to be trying this evening, is entry number F89-RD1-27X. So that's Frank 89 RD1-27 0. No, 0 starts with a Z. Xerox. There, that starts with an X. It just sounds like a Z. Whatever. X-ray. That's the one. Frank 89 RD1-27X. The label on this one says beer style is a New England IPA, has an ABV of 6%. The adjunct is flaked wheat, and the hops are Citra, Eldorado, and Mosaic. And those all three are citrusy or fruity hops, which you would expect for a New England IPA. Mosaic also can be a little earthy, grassy, piney, can have some of that to it. So I'm interested to see what this is going to taste like. So let's get it open and get it poured. Pop there. So what makes a New England IPA a New England IPA? Typically a New England IPA tends to be cloudy or hazy. Has that, some of them have that almost milky appearance to them. This one's got a nice orange color to it, a little hazy, but not super opaque like I've seen some of them. The other thing with a New England IPA is, instead of having that super crisp dry off at the end like your typical West Coast IPAs do, a New England IPA traditionally or for the most part should kind of have that juicy fruitiness at the end, kind of thing that leaves your mouth watering like you've bit into a grapefruit, so with the sweet and tart at the same time. So right off the bat I'm getting both that earthiness and that grapefruity nose off of this one from that combination of hops. It was a very pleasing aroma. Definitely. Take a sip. Not a juice bomb. So And that's not necessarily a bad thing. A lot of really good flavors happening in there. It's interesting because you can taste that combination of hops. You get that citrus, but you also get that piney resinous from the mosaic that you can pick up in there. Definitely got that flavor. It does dry off at the end. It's not super juicy at the end, but it's a little bit juicy at the end. Oh, that's the other thing about New England IPAs. Typically, they have a thick, I'm going to use the word thicker, a thicker mouthfeel than a typical West Coast IPA. That tends to be a trademark of those as well. So I'm going to take a look at this, make a few tasting notes, and then I will come back and give you some final thoughts. I am back with some final thoughts on beer F89-RD1-27X. So it's not as hazy as I would have anticipated for a New England IPA. It is hazy, however. It's not clear. You can't see the whole way through it. It does have a little bit of an opaqueness there to it. As far as the carbonation goes, it's pretty good, pretty decently carbonated for this style of beer. And you are able to work up a little bit of a head on it, and it does stick, it has some legs to it. It sticks to the glass, so that's good. Aroma, I kind of touched on that at the beginning when I first opened the beer and poured it. I got that big citrus nose and could also pick up some of that piney resinous from the mosaic. Now, as the beer has gotten a little warmer as I've been sitting here drinking it, some of that nose has gone away. And I'm still getting a hint of the citrus, but I'm not getting it as predominantly as I was when I first poured the beer. From a flavor standpoint, the one thing that I would say, as I've done these beers, I've tried to kind of pick one point, sort of my constructive criticism or whatever you want to call it, or just, my take, because we all enjoy things differently and taste things differently. Is I would have liked to have had a bit more of that juiciness, that New England borderline fruit bomb that I tend to be used to when I'm thinking about a New England IPA. Now, that's not to say that this wasn't a good beer. As I was drinking this, I kept thinking this reminds me of something that I've had from a commercial brewery, and it took me a few minutes to come up with it, but I finally figured out what it was, and it's a beer called Juicy Goodness by Left Hand Brewing, and that is a dry hopped golden ale, and that actually is really what this beer reminds me of. And that beer, I get that beer when I go down to the beach house because it makes great mimosas. Well, not mimosas, beer mosas. So I like beer mosas. I like to find good citrus hopped ales or IPAs that don't have a ton of bitter to them to mix up with my orange juice with brunch instead of having champagne. And that Juicy Goodness from Left Hand is a fantastic beer to do that with because it's not a juice bomb and it's not thick and chunky. You can mix it with orange juice and it makes a great beer mosa, and that's what this beer reminds me of. So it actually reminds me of a beer that is a dry hopped golden ale versus a New England IPA. And that could just be the East Coaster in me and the way the New England IPAs I'm used to around here, but I just really am more accustomed to a lot more citrus hop coming through in the New England IPAs. From a mouthfeel standpoint, I would say, again, this to me is more like a citrus hopped ale versus the New England IPAs because they, again, tend to have a little heavier or fuller mouthfeel than this. Not a knock on the beer at all. Again, I'm enjoying it. Just not, just sometimes they have a little bit heavier mouthfeel or are a little fuller body than what this one is. Overall, like I said before, it would make a great beer mosa. It would also be a great beer to pour on the weekends if you've been working around the house and it's warmer, as we're segueing into warmer weather. Just kind of open one and sit out on the deck and sip on it. It'd be a great beer for that. From a creativity or craftsmanship standpoint, The only thing I would say is I would like to see a little bit more of a balance of those citrus hops. Have them be just a little bit more forward in the beer. I don't think you would have to change the haziness or the mouthfeel of it. I would just like to see more of those citrus hops kind of shine through in this one from the New England IPA standpoint. But I did enjoy it. I'm enjoying it. Almost done with it. So I'm glad I picked this one to go through this evening, my after work day beer before I go back to work. So anyway, I've enjoyed this one. I hope you guys are out there enjoying some good brews as well. So everybody take care, stay well. Cheers.